Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Maria Gallo, and I'm president of Delaware Valley University, and welcome to the second town hall of the semester. And today's session includes students, faculty, and staff. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that today is the 19th anniversary of the September 11th terrorist attacks. So sometimes today, please take a moment to reflect on how blessed we are to be alive and to feel all the emotions that 9/11 conjures up for us as we honor those who died that day, as well as the first responders and frontline workers who were as fearless and giving of themselves 19 years ago as they are today to keep us safe as we now battle another enemy, the coronavirus. Thank you. Today, we're going to cover several topics that were generated by the questions we received, as well as give you updates on various functional areas to better communicate with you what's happening at Del Val and to answer your questions. We're going to cover topics such as health and safety issues, the structures that are in place to monitor COVID and act upon those issues. We're going to hear from our vice presidents about campus life and updates on office operations, dining improvements, academics, and recruiting efforts. First, though, I want to discuss face coverings. And I want to talk about what are acceptable face coverings. And since the plan came out, we now know that bandanas and gaiters are not acceptable face coverings, right? We want to have the best possible protection. So cloth masks, several layers especially, are the best to use. So please use cloth masks and wear them properly. Cover your mouth and your nose, okay? And I think we've seen numerous demos to express how that looks, right? Cover your mouth and your nose because we have receptors both in our mouth and especially in our nose that the COVID virus can attach to and cause the disease. So please wear them properly. Know that you wear them on campus as you're walking around campus, going to different, thank you, I see Kathy Howell at the bottom showing how to wear a face mask properly. Excellent. And I like that face mask too, green and gold. Wear those face masks as you properly as you go around campus to the different buildings, as you interact with people with the proper social distancing. Do not eat or drink while in a classroom or a laboratory. We need you to have your face masks up when you are with groups of people. And it's important to remain vigilant even when I know you can start having mask fatigue, right? It really can be extremely annoying and uncomfortable at times, particularly when there's a lot of heat. And, you know, we've seen outbreaks at other campuses when they've not been compliant. And so when they're not wearing face masks properly, not doing the social distancing that we know helps, we will have outbreaks then. So we're doing a fantastic job, and I want us to maintain that kind of diligence. So now I'm going to move to talking about our current status on campus, and I'm thrilled to report that there are currently no positive COVID cases on or off campus to track. The few that we have had have been resolved. So that's really great news, but that doesn't mean we need to let down our guard because the virus is still out there. So we must be safe and we must practice wearing our mask, social distancing, washing our hands frequently, and all the things that I know that you've heard many, many times to keep us in this good status. I also want to encourage you to take the Keeping Aggies Healthy Pledge. And we are one community, and that displays our commitment and our solidarity. And I hope you're getting my weekly email updates, and I hope that you find them helpful. And the latest one was sent out this morning. So I'll keep doing that, and please continue to send in your questions because we want to answer those and make you feel comfortable with what we're doing on campus. So now I'm going to pass the baton on over to Jennifer Brennan, our Director of Human Resources, and she's going to cover COVID status updates, particularly regarding the COVID response core team, Medicat, contact tracing, and some other issues. So Jennifer, send it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Gallo. Hi, everybody. I wanted to tell you all about the core COVID response team. I'm one of 3 members of the core team. The other 2 members of the core team are Miriam Torres, Director of the Student Health Center, and Tim Poirier, Dean of Students. Miriam, Tim, and I meet first thing every single morning, and we review the current status of any positives, documented exposures, isolations both on campus and off campus, quarantines both on and off campus, student separations from campus, and COVID concern reports. And we're also monitoring how many Medicat screens we receive each day, both students and employees, as well as the Bucks County COVID positive rate. The core team investigates every situation that is brought to our attention, which is primarily through Medicat. This is why it's so important for everyone to complete their Medicat screen every day. We've actually recently noticed a decline in Medicat screens being completed every day, so I wanted to use this as an opportunity to remind everybody that this needs to be done every day by students and by employees if they're coming to campus at all. The core team is constantly monitoring the Medicat results and following up on them, so if we hear of potential exposures or concerns by another means, we will definitely investigate those as well, but the most efficient and direct means of notifying the core team of any symptoms or any exposures is by completing that Medicat screen. From there, we're ensuring implementation of quarantine, isolation protocols, monitoring compliance of those protocols. And when we do have a student in isolation, we're also assigning a university point of contact to the student for support. In instances of any positives and persons under investigation, we are initiating contact tracing. And I just want to remind you that a person under investigation is an individual with symptoms who has been tested. Receiving a red badge in Medicat doesn't automatically make you a person under investigation. In some instances, individuals have received a red badge if they're feeling, a little under the weather, but the next day they're feeling better. If you get a red badge, students should work with the health center and employees with your doctor to determine if testing is warranted. So again, the core team is initiating contact tracing for positives and persons under investigation. While contact tracing is officially done by the Department of Health, we're taking these extra steps in order to get ahead of any potential clusters and keep our numbers as low as possible. Twice a week, the core team reports to the larger COVID response team and the President's Cabinet. Without breaching any confidentiality or giving any identifying information, we're reporting the status of any positive cases, persons under investigation, isolations on and off campus, and quarantines on and off campus. If any patterns or clusters are detected, they would be reported as well. And then finally, we're updating the marketing and communication department every day with numbers for the dashboard, so the website can be updated every single day. You'll hear more about the dashboard and the larger COVID response team in a little bit, but first, Dr. Vary, our Vice President for Campus Life and Inclusive Excellence, is going to talk about how we have been handling testing.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday. We did receive a few questions about testing, particularly from students, so I'm happy to have the opportunity to say a little bit more about it. Each question had a slightly different angle, so I will provide you with some general comments that I hope will capture everything that was asked. Our approach to testing has really been informed by a great deal of research and consultation with medical experts, public health experts, epidemiology experts. And as you've probably read in our plan, we test symptomatic persons, and we're taking a very conservative approach. We really, to refer back to some of Jennifer's comments, want to do everything in our power to keep our campus safe and healthy. So even low-level symptoms that may not be immediately indicated for COVID could be tested just in the sort of objective of keeping us all safe. So we're testing symptomatic people. And then our plan says, and we are doing this, that we will test students who may not have symptoms, but who have had recent known exposure, okay? So those are asymptomatic people, but there may be circumstances under which they've been near someone with COVID. We've also done and will continue to do testing of student cohorts to monitor our incidence rate, which is sort of the percentage of people who take a test that might be positive. You may have seen in Dr. Gallo's First Friday message that we did our first rollout of some cohort testing right before move-in, and we were delighted with a 0% incident rate, so that was a great way to start the semester. We've just completed another round of testing this week, a cohort of students who volunteered, so thanks very much to them. And we'll be sending those tests off to the lab today. So we'll certainly keep you apprised of how that goes. And we do plan to continue this episodic testing throughout the semester because it's a good proactive way to keep tabs on how things are happening across campus. So why didn't we test everyone before school started? Again, this was based on the expert guidance about the real efficacy of this approach for institutions of higher education. So think of a test as a point in time. You could be tested today and test negative, but really be positive because you were exposed yesterday, but your body just hasn't started shedding the virus yet. So that's kind of one example. Or you could be tested today and be negative, but in 3 days be exposed to the virus. If you think about it, it would take almost daily testing of everybody to render that strategy really useful to us. So what we've been doing instead is all the measures that Jennifer talked about, Medicat, which has been truly useful in our efforts. And we've been testing symptomatic, asymptomatic, and cohorts, as I described. So one of the questions about testing everyone was posed in the context of news that we've all seen about schools that have gone remote for the semester. Dr. Gallo referred to those in her opening comments, to the very high numbers of cases that they've started to see, many of them asymptomatic. So what I think it's important for us to just remember is that at virtually all of those schools, their outbreak of cases had at their source large social gatherings where all of the precautions were not being heeded. Masks weren't being worn, distancing was not in place. So we really have to look at behavior and compliance. It's a really important thing. That in the long run is the best protection we all have to keep each other safe and to move through the semester. We also had some questions about behavior and compliance, and I'm going to comment again on those in a little bit, but I hold that for now. So we just would ask you to remember that the conditions that we have in place, universal masking and distancing, they make a huge difference in containing the spread. And that testing every person on campus with the frequency required, again, to render it useful, is just not the course of action that our medical experts guided us to. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of context of our efforts and why not testing everyone, but rather testing for the circumstances that revealed themselves. So I'll be back later, but with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kathy Howell, who's our Associate VP for Marketing and Communications, who will talk to you a little bit more about the larger COVID response team.
Thanks, April. Hello, I'm Kathy Howell, and I am a member of what we call the larger COVID response team. So Jennifer spoke about the core team, which was the 3 people, Tim Poirier, Miriam Torres, and Jennifer, who meet daily. And then the larger team meets on Tuesdays and Thursdays, could also meet as needed should there be an issue. And the larger team includes myself, to handle communications issues that are relevant to our response to the COVID pandemic. It also includes Colin Chambers, who's Director of Risk Management, and Dean Jean Smolin and Professor Cynthia Keller, who represent obviously the academic areas and faculty. So we are briefed on what's happening. We are not privy to the names of individuals who are being tested or who possibly have COVID. There's no reason for us to know that information, but we are updated on the status and whatever concerns might be happening. And then it's our role in the larger COVID response team to bring decisions or issues to the president's cabinet so that decisions can be made at that level in terms of actions that we might take. And an example of this is that once we got underway and had everyone settled in, we decided to add the counts for active COVID cases and persons under investigation to the website so that the campus community would have access to those numbers. And so that recommendation came from the COVID response, the larger COVID response team, to the cabinet, and then cabinet elected to move forward. So that's kind of explains what that larger team is about, bringing in these other areas of the university to be updated on the status and determine which issues might need to go to cabinet. I'd also like to talk about that dashboard that I just mentioned. So you will find this, it's very easy to find on the website. You can either go to the home page and click on the yellow bar on the very top of the home page that says most current COVID information, or you can go to delval.edu/healthy, and that takes you to the same page. The very first element that you see there on that web page is our mascot with a mask on, properly done, of course. And then you see the numbers. So for example, today, as Dr. Gallo mentioned, we have 0 active cases. Yesterday we had 1. That means that that person has now cleared the virus and is fine. Yesterday we had 5 persons under investigation. And again, as Jennifer mentioned, that means that this person has symptoms, that there's a suspicion that it could be COVID. So they are being tested and we're waiting for results. And during that time, they are in isolation. Yesterday, the number was 5. Today, the number is 1 with no new cases. That means 4 of them have received test results. They do not have COVID, so they will go out of isolation. So these numbers are updated daily as soon as the core team has met in the morning. It'll always be updated by noon on the website. And those are the numbers that we're working with to make our decisions. So that's the best place for you to go for that. Additionally, if you see something happening that you have a concern about, people gathering and not social distancing, not wearing their masks, please report it. It's really important for the entire community to stay safe and for us to be able to stay on campus and be the school that actually succeeded. And so the COVID concern form is now actually right below those numbers on that landing page for the COVID information. It was elsewhere, we've moved it now right to that page so you can read the numbers for the day and then click right there to make a report if you are aware of something happening on or off campus where people are just not following the guidelines that are so far keeping us all safe. That is pretty much what I had. I am going to pass this on now to Terry Jackson, who is the Chief of Staff for our President, Dr. Gallo. Terry.
Thanks, Kathy. And hello, everyone. It's really great to be with you, even though it seems odd not to see you. I know you're out there. I see that we have about 110 people or so on this call, 105 faculty, staff, students. So welcome. We're glad that you're here. I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about the President's Task Force for Reopening and just kind of give you a sense of what that group has done to date and what it is doing now. So as you know, right after we closed in March, we started planning about what reopening would look like in the various areas that are represented here on the screen. Dr. Gallo put together a task force to really look at building a plan that would get us back on campus. And that is the blueprint that we've referred to throughout our communications with you. But I wanted to take just a moment to thank those people because some of them are on this call, that the amount of time and effort our colleagues put in over the summer to develop that plan. When information about how to open, whether to open, and under what conditions shifted on a daily basis was amazing. And I really want to take this moment to recognize these folks for their work. If you see them on campus, if you interact with them, please give them your thanks. From our faculty, Bruce Richards, Elizabeth Skendix, Melissa Langston, and Christy Smith were members of the task force, as well as the following staff folks: Mike Davis, Pat Callahan and his team. When I'm allowed to hug Pat, I'm going to. Bill Lyle, the deans, Brock Sandlin, Tanya Casas, and Jean Smolin all served as well. Tim Poirier has been running on all kinds of committees and doing all kinds of work to get us back safely. Colin Chambers, Jennifer Brennan and Nancy Hall, Miriam Torres, Dave Duda, and Jim Slazewski, as well as my colleagues, Cheryl Moyer, April Very, and Ben, and Jennifer, all were put in countless hours over the summer. Some of these task force groups, there were 20 folks on the main task force and another 15 to 20 people who served in approximately 15 work groups. Those folks, some of them were meeting daily. Our task force was meeting at least twice a week to look at how to get reopened again. Once we developed the plan and released that and had that vetted through many people, and it went through folks at Doylestown Hospital, the Department of Health, through legal review. There were so many people and so many bodies that had input into that plan. Once that was released, I think everyone took a deep breath and then went, well, okay, now we have to make this happen. And so the task force really shifted from a planning frame at the organizational level to looking at how we could support the individual areas in making this happen. As we know, things continue to change and shift in terms of the advice that we're given on what to do and how to stay open. The COVID response team was actually a body that was conceived of by the task force, and that COVID response team was then established, as you just heard from Jennifer and Kathy, to monitor and deal with case counts and looking at outbreaks across the university. So now we're actually shifting a little bit more into implementation and how we can support implementation efforts. And also we're getting a chance, even just this morning, to do a little scenario planning. So we're able to do so without being in panic action mode, as so many institutions are finding themselves in, but we're actually able to anticipate and think through, if we have to change conditions on campus for any reason, what's impacted? How do we do that? And how do we do that not in a crisis moment, but in a planful one? So the same folks that I shouted out already are still serving in that capacity on the ongoing task force. And we will continue to work together, gaining input from across the university and from my colleagues here to really look at how we can continue to do this in a healthy, safe way for the entire campus community. It's why I want to emphasize what others have said here, which is it's so, so, so important for each and every member of our campus community to work hard to overcome mask fatigue, to keep doing your screenings, to keep practicing social distancing, to do all these things that we know are really hard. And we know that they felt novel in the beginning, and it's like, yeah, that's okay to do. But now we have to do the hard work of continuing to do it so that we can stay safe and stay open. And these various committees and bodies that we've talked about here today will continue to do their work tirelessly on top of their regular jobs that they have to try to make sure that we're responsive, that we're listening, and that we're able to adapt as only Aggies can. So I want to thank those folks from the bottom of my heart, and again, ask you to please work hard, work together. Let's get this done. Let's stay open. I think we can do it. I know the task force believes in all of us and all of you to do that. So let me now take a moment to pass this back to Dr. April Very, who's going to continue to talk more about campus life as she promised you just a few minutes ago. Thanks everyone, and stay safe.
Thanks, Terry. I do have a couple campus life items to talk about. First, I want to respond to a question that we got from a few students about the difference between quarantine and isolation. And it can be confusing because at some level they kind of do similar things. The terms quarantine and isolation, when you hear them, and you heard them from Jennifer and others, are terms used for actions that are taken related to symptoms and exposure. If you haven't had a chance to really look at the blueprint, there's a great glossary at the beginning, so really encourage you to do that because it'll give you a lot of good information. But when someone is directed into isolation, what that means is that they have received a positive test result for COVID. They actually have it. They have a contagious illness. People may also be directed into isolation if they have symptoms that are characteristic of COVID, but they're waiting for test results to confirm. Okay, so that's the person under investigation that Jennifer talked about. That's when we isolate people because there are symptoms at play, there's presence of the virus. The isolation idea is really to separate ill people from those who are not currently known to be ill. When it's possible and appropriate, we are asking students to isolate at home, where hopefully they can receive more attentive care. But we know it's not always possible, and people have asked about this. We certainly know that we have students who have family members back at home who may have health compromises. And so in instances like that, we have spaces on campus away from the normal residential population that have private baths and secluded areas where people can isolate. But if at all possible, we have been asking people to isolate at home. In quarantine, then, we are separating people who are believed to have been exposed, but they're not symptomatic right now. So we're separating people who may have been exposed to monitor so that we can kind of keep tabs on their health and to see if symptoms actually appear. And of course, if that happens, then we move them into an isolation scenario. So it is confusing because in some ways, both of those processes achieve a similar end in that there's some level of separation of people or limits to their freedom or movement or things that they can do on campus. But the reasons are a little different in terms of being ill or not being ill at the moment. So hopefully that helps, but I was asked to clarify that, so I wanted to take a second to do that. So I want to talk about athletics and recreation for a moment. And I think this is a great example to me of how students being really responsible over the first couple weeks has allowed us to open some more opportunities for you to be engaged on campus. So I'd like to talk about both of them. First of all, athletics, because you may start to see some of our student athletes engaging in activity on campus. As you know by now, fall sports competition was suspended by our conference. And while that is the case in terms of competition, every school is permitted to offer our student athletes some level of engagement and activity under the direction of their coaches that's aligned with all the institutional, local, national health and safety guidelines. So our student athlete engagement plans began this week, and they will occur in 2-week phases, with each subsequent phase only happening upon safe and successful completion of the prior phase. Student athletes are participating voluntarily. They're not training right now for competition because there is no competition in place. But again, we know how important this is for our student athletes, and we're thrilled that we're able to provide this opportunity. So the kinds of things you might see your peers doing on campus would be things like strength and conditioning drills and activities, running, skills instruction, maybe some agility and flexibility work. Again, they're not practicing for a game, but they're keeping their bodies, well-tuned and ready to participate. A couple things that you might want to know, because I think they're really important, because to everybody's point, we are still doing everything in our power to be safe along with all of the guidelines that we have set up. So these engagement opportunities are supervised, coached, managed, and run. They are non-contact. They are outdoors only. They are small groups of students, fewer than 10. Our student athletes are wearing face coverings at all times. They're keeping social distance of 6 feet or more. They're showing their green Medicat badge before they even begin. And they're really getting some instruction on hand hygiene. So all of those things are in place, but to me, it's really a wonderful example of being able to roll back into activity. Similarly with recreation, students, hopefully you've seen the communication from Dave Duda, our athletic director. Our athletics coaches and staff have made available to you some spaces on campus that you can reserve for recreation time. Same guidelines as our student athletes, fewer than 10, got to wear masks, social distance, you have to be screened. But we really hope you'll take advantage of that. You know, we know that the longer this goes in, you might just really need to burn off some energy or to get some recreation. And I just really want to thank our coaches who have stepped up, and they are staffing this for you. This is not for student athletes, this is for any student. So if you see our coaches, please give them a thank you for putting in this extra time to supervise all this activity so that you can be a little bit more active on campus. The other thing I was asked to comment on a little bit as it relates to campus life is monitoring and compliance, right? Remember, I talked a little bit in the testing section about behavior, and some of the schools that just haven't succeeded as long as we have, it's been because of social behavior that's just thrown caution to the wind and has not been masked up or socially distanced. So that did lead a couple students to ask about how things are being monitored on campus and what's happening if there are issues of concern. You already heard from Kathy Howell that we do have the COVID response form. Please use it. It is monitored. I assure you that it is. Those reports get reviewed and they do get followed up upon. If it's an employee-related concern, Jennifer jumps into it. If it's a student conduct issue, it would be Dean Tim, but they are all reviewed and they are all taken seriously. So if you have a concern, that's one thing you can do. We also have our public safety officers responding to things. I can give you some common scenarios. You know, it might be that somebody overhears what sounds like too many people in a room and they're asked to come and check it out. I see the reports that come in every day, and I assure you that they are being called to look into things. But here's the thing. There will never be enough of them to respond to every single concern that might have on campus. So we all have to help, right? We are all part of this community together. And if we see something, we've got to say something, either through the form, or maybe if you're comfortable just saying something to the person who's not maybe following the drill. That can be hard. I certainly appreciate that. You don't want to do something that's not comfortable, but you know, if it's somebody that you know, if it's a peer, you just say, hey, how about putting your mask up over your nose, or, you know, whatever the case may be. I've done it. I know colleagues across campus are. You might run across someone who gives you a hard time. It's not been my experience yet. I think most people really want to do the right thing. So I just invite us all to think of ourselves as force multipliers, right? Being out there and being responsible for our community, and in whatever way you think you can, to help a little bit with the eyes on and reporting and taking action about things. I really feel strongly about that. If you've got concerns about social events that are occurring off campus, that was a question, got to let us know. You know, that's not necessarily our purview to patrol. If you're really concerned and you believe there's a big disruptive party and you see it, you can call the police. You're a citizen in the community as well, if that's the case. I mean, you have some tools available to you, but let us know. We can't intervene unless we have the information. So again, just a little update on monitoring. Hope that's helpful as well. The last thing I wanted to say is, you know, we've all been reading in the news how critical it's going to be this fall for all of us to get flu shots, because, you know, combining flu season, which picks up in the fall, with more people being inside because the weather changes and the current virus situations, you know, it's really going to be more essential than ever. So in the fall, our health center always runs a flu clinic for students. Our HR department will be running one for employees. Please, please, please give every consideration to protecting yourself and protecting the rest of us with a flu shot, to just take one more potential risk off the table for all of us. So thanks for that. Students, if you got any questions, please, you know, follow up with me directly. I'm happy to answer them. But I'm going to toss it over now to Cheryl Moyer, who's our interim VP for Finance and Administration, who has some things about dining and other issues to share with you.
Great, thank you, Dr. Barry. Good afternoon to you all, and it's great to be with you this afternoon, and hopefully your day is going well as we prepare for a lovely weekend. Before I move into the dining information, I'd like to just react to some of the questions we received with respect to the offices on campus. So we are physically open. All student support offices are physically open, including admission. You'll hear later from VP Payne regarding the opening of admission and what's going on there. Campus Life offices are open, the bursar's office over, so too is the registrar and financial aid. There's other offices open as well, including human resources and the payroll office. And I should remind you that the payroll office has moved and they are now located in-house too. And the finances office is open. Now, of course, you've heard through this presentation today the importance of social distancing and wearing masks and so forth. So that's the same here when you need to reach out to these offices. So we need to maintain that social distancing. So we're encouraging you to schedule appointments with the various offices and also communicate with our offices with respect to email. Folks are monitoring email, monitoring phones, and are available to help and serve you all. With that, let's talk a little bit about dining. As you know, we have a number of venues operating this fall, including Levin and Starbucks that's located outside Levin, as well as Mumges and the pub. So Levin and Starbucks are open daily from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. We're serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner through various time slots. Breakfast is from 6 in the morning for the early risers and goes to 10 for those of us that are later risers, and lunch from 11 to 3 and dinner from 4 to 9. And you'll note that between breakfast and lunch and dinner, there's an hour. And that's for allow Parkhurst to switch out the line with the new food coming in for the various meals. But during that time, you can still go to the venue and pick up a grab and go. So know that that's still open for you. In Mumges, that's open daily as well, but only from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. And that's serving lunch and dinner there as well. Pub is open too, but that's Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Also, like to remind you that you can see the menu for the week on My Del Val. So what will you see there? Well, you'll see what's the grill special is for the day. You'll see what the soups are, what the entrees are, what the sides are. The vegan and vegetarian options will be listed there, as well as the gluten-free options. So take a look at that and you can see what's upcoming for the week. Also, please know that Parkhurst welcomes your suggestions for food options. And you can communicate with them in a number of ways. So you can email them, email Chef Gerald, he'd love to hear from you, or Joe Friday, who's our general manager. You can find their information also on My Del Val, and all the information for dining, if you go into My Del Val, look under campus services, and then under dining services. You can also find their business cards at all of the various venues. You can also speak with them directly, of course, maintain social distancing, and we'll all have our masks on, but certainly outreach to them whenever you can. And for students, you also have a liaison with student government, and that is Anthony Rago, and reach out to him. Parkhurst would love to hear from you. Tell them what you need, tell them what you want. They'd love to hear what you like and what you don't, so that we can make appropriate changes, so that we can make your dining experience not only healthy, but satisfying. So please do take an opportunity to reach out to them. We have some changes that we're working on to help improve things for you, working to institute more made-to-food order options. So we can't do the salad bar as you're normally accustomed to, but we're looking to do something similar to that. So it's a salad bar, but not really a self-serve salad bar. So look for that. And then last year, Chef Gerald worked with some students and we had a chef's table. And with that, he prepared some new foods so students could try and we can figure out whether or not they are things that they liked so we can add to the food menu. So we're working with Parkhurst to reinstitute that in, of course, in a more virtual kind of way. So we can go ahead and try to find some new options for you all. Also, we've heard some comments and some questions and some concerns about all the vessels that we're using in our various venues with respect to takeouts. So please know that in Levin, we are serving meals on china and using silverware. And we can do that there because we do have facilities where we can wash and sanitize them. However, in those facilities like Mumges, where we don't have that facility, we have to use disposables. But know that we are looking for available products that are more environmentally friendly so that we can go ahead and be good stewards of our environment. You're also using cans and bottles with respect to beverages in the dining hall, and know that those are recyclable. You'll find the recycling bins located in each one of the dining venues and outside on campus. You won't find them in a specific color, but they're not standardized, but you'll find them. They might be blue bins or gray or green or combination colors. We also have some bins that are 3 units. So one is for trash and one is for bottles and cans and the other one's for other types of recyclables. Pay attention to what's listed on them so that you're putting your items in the appropriate vessel so that we can properly recycle them. And we need your help with that because cans and bottles, as I mentioned, are recyclable, but they're only recyclable if they're clean and empty. So when you use one of the cans or the bottles, please be sure to empty it out before placing it within the recycling bin and use the appropriate bin. Did you know that if you put your can or your bottle in a recycling bin and then throw in perhaps a wrapper or maybe some food, that all that's in that bin can no longer be recycled and it is treated as trash? It's the truth. We all can play a role in making sure that we're good stewards of our environment by being careful when we dispose of our items. So take a look at how they're labeled and dispose of them properly. And with that, I'm going to turn the podium over to Dr. Ben, who is Vice President of Academic Affairs and Dean of the Faculty. Dr. Wislowski.
Thanks, Cheryl. It's great to be with you here today to answer the questions that have come in regarding academic affairs. The first of which is looking ahead to spring of 2021. And it's hard to believe that we're already talking about spring, given that the drop ad period is just barely behind us. But as we would normally be doing right now, we're working with the department chairs and the deans to lay out the spring schedule based on courses that are needed for our students to keep them on track. But I've been asked about what we anticipate the modalities being for those courses. So I began that conversation yesterday at the Academic Council meeting with the chairs and deans. And I'll tell you that what we're expecting right now is that the spring will look a lot like the fall, meaning that the courses will be a mixture of face-to-face, online, and remote offerings that will have as a goal at least 75% of those being offered face-to-face. I'm going to be following up on that conversation with the full faculty on Monday at our first faculty meeting of the fall semester, and then working with the chairs and deans to identify which courses and or which sections will fall into which modalities, so that we're able to convey that information a little earlier than we were able to this summer, so that when we release the schedule at the end of October, we'll have as much of that information embedded with the course offerings as possible. So please stay tuned for updates on that, but know that we are looking at spring and we expect it to look much like the fall semester, working with our faculty, our department chairs, and our deans. I was also asked to give an update on the new graduate programs, and I was really happy to get this question because it's nice to talk about something that's not pandemic related. As you know, a major goal of our strategic plan has been to develop new graduate programs and to ultimately double the number of graduate students we have in those programs. And I'm pleased to report that our two master's degrees, new master's degree programs that we had talked about over the summer have successfully launched a master's degree in management and organizational leadership, which began this fall with a cohort of 18 students, as well as a master's degree in healthcare administration with a cohort of 11 students. And that latter program was developed in collaboration with Doylestown Hospital and the team there. And that program is an important foundation for the prong of graduate program development that was in the strategic plan that focuses on us getting into the healthcare arena, developing the partnerships necessary to make that successful, and beginning with programs that make sense for us to strengthen that foundation. And certainly that master's degree in healthcare administration is one of them. And that's led us to be able to move on into the development of our master's programs in speech language pathology and physician assistant studies. And I'm pleased to report that we were able to launch both of those programs in terms of their development with the hiring for speech language pathology of our founding director, Dr. Troy Darjan, this summer, who will be submitting on behalf of the institution our application for the program to its accrediting group this coming February. And we are in the final stages of hiring the founding director for the physician assistant studies program, who will be working with us on the rather extensive accreditation requirements that are in place to make that program happen as well. Both of those programs are on target to be launched in the fall of 2022. And I would like to thank Dr. John Wisnicki, Dean of Graduate Studies, as well as Christy Ringen and also Danielle Pedrati for their work in getting the new master's programs launched, and John and Danielle for their continued efforts working with Troy and the incoming director for physician assistant studies to get those programs moving through the accreditation process for launch 2 years from now. Hard to believe that the planning takes place that far in advance. I'd also like to point out too that our master's degree program in agribusiness management will be launched this spring with its first cohort. And I'd like to thank John as well as Brock Sandelin, John Urbanchuk, and our new faculty member and academic program director, Melissa Wright, for their work on that program. And we're excited to get that launched and in place as well this coming January. I'd also like to point out that we have a new undergraduate program under development in the Department of Food Science, Nutrition, and Management. That is a bachelor's degree program in nutrition science that's being developed by Dr. Tom Zhu and the department. That will be presented to the curriculum committee this fall for its consideration, with the anticipation of being able to launch that in the fall of 2021. And lastly, I would like to take this opportunity, given that we've got students, faculty, and staff in this town hall meeting, to encourage and strongly recommend your participation in the School of Business and Humanities year-long colloquium series entitled Question It, Change It, where the topic is racism in the United States. The goal of the series is to examine and deepen our understanding of structural racism and how to take action against it. And this is a really creative setup for all of us so that we can easily participate. It is available to us through our Blackboard shells that we all have, and we're able to participate in modules on various topics throughout the coming year in both synchronous and asynchronous presentations. And the first module was launched in this past week on anti-racism by Dr. Jessica McCall. She has provided wonderful foundational materials to get this series started and led a 2-hour conversation with our students and faculty and staff this past Wednesday on this topic, with a follow-up next Thursday, September 17th at 1 o'clock. That module will be followed by the next in the series, presented by Dr. Craig Stutman, on monuments, memorials, race, and power. And I'd ask you to look for an email from Dr. Casas about how to engage in the series, but also how to log on so that you can participate in the next discussion that Dr. McCall will be having and really engage in these thoughtful conversations. I'd like to thank the School of Business and Humanities for bringing us together as a community to really delve into these topics further and get us to think about them in a more thoughtful and constructive way so that we can move forward together tackling these issues as one community. They certainly tie into our core values and are very timely for all of us. Lastly, I'd like to finish, as I always do, with our academic chair meetings, as well as our faculty meetings, and thank everybody for their continued patience, flexibility, and understanding as we work together this fall. Remember, I always tell all of you, it's good to throw a little kindness in as well. I am very grateful for all you're doing to support the institution and also to support each other. And on that note, I'm going to kick things over to Kathy Payne, who is our Vice President for Enrollment Management. Kathy?
Thanks, Dr. Ben. Good afternoon, everybody. First, I want to extend a huge welcome back to all of our students on campus and virtual. And I really want to extend a special welcome to our newest freshmen and transfer Aggies. Like you, I'm a new Aggie. I was blessed to take on the role of Vice President for Enrollment Management this past March. So here's to new adventures amidst a pandemic. As Brian Dawkins told you all recently, we're strong enough, especially when we stay together and do things the right way. I firmly believe we got this. I can tell you without a doubt that you have joined a true community and family filled with people who want nothing but your well-being, your success, and your happiness. You've chosen wisely, and so have I. My team in enrollment management has been hard at work on all fronts. Our financial aid team is busy assisting all of our students, making sure that you and your families are guided through financing your education. They're always available, to Cheryl's point, they're always available to counsel you through any questions, challenges that you face. This top-notch group of professionals has your needs front of mind always, so please don't ever hesitate to reach out to your counselor. They can help in any way. Our undergraduate day admission team is also hard at work. We began hosting virtual events in March, and as of early August, we've been hosting small on-campus visits and tours for prospective Aggies and their families. So if you see our ambassadors giving a tour for a family in their green and yellow rugby shirts, you can't miss them. They're awesome. Around campus, be sure to give a wave and say hello. And I really want to also thank all of our colleagues and friends across campus who've taken part in these virtual and live admission offerings or helped to facilitate them in some way. Our faculty and staff, I firmly believe this, are true partners, and they help my team showcase how special a place Del Val really is. We continue to provide multiple visit and event options, and we're currently in the midst of planning our first ever virtual fall open houses. The dates for our open houses are October 11th and November 15th, and we're working hard to create an engaging and fun event for our prospective families. We look forward to yet again partnering with our colleagues and our students across campus to create an experience that's a true showcase of everything that is Del Val. And finally, I really look forward, I haven't been on campus much until the fall, so I'm excited to be here and I look forward to meeting you guys across campus. So if you see me, it'll look like this. Please stop me and say hello. I'm glad to be here. And again, welcome back. Have a fantastic fall term. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, President Gallo.
Great, thank you, Kathy, and thank you to all my colleagues for your information today. And I want to thank everyone who has attended this town hall. I hope you found this to be informative, and we'll update you on future town halls. And please continue to send us questions so we can answer them and get the relevant information out to you quickly. Have a great weekend, and remember, go Aggies. Have a good one.